we all want this. But a lot of times we end up doing this. We all want the Andrei Rublev forehand or Iga Swiatek's forehand. But at club level, what I'm seeing more often than not is that when players try to hit harder, they're using only their arm. And what we're neglecting then is that basically the arm, your hand, are the last links in the kinetic chain. And if we're not using that chain, that proper sequence correctly, then yeah, you can wail at the ball and nothing's going to come out, and you're only exacerbating errors or you're actually hurting yourself. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to use your body appropriately, how it's synced up properly so that you can hit your most powerful forehand yet. When you see, for instance, Andrei Rublev's forehand or Emma Raducanu's, what we do see is an incredible fast arm movement. And in fact, it's so fast that you can't even see the contact point because it's too fast for the human eye. But what they're doing is they're using their entire body appropriately to generate force. And kinetic chain is basically the transfer of energy throughout your body. And if you're just looking to generate power with your arm, you're basically starting at the very end of the motion. So what does that mean to load? Now we're talking specifically about the forehand, and the best energy transfer on the forehand comes from the ground up. It starts with your legs, it travels through your hips, torso, trunk, and then shoulders, arm, elbow, hand, lastly the wrist, and then of course the racket. So that is how we want to load. So if you think about your forehand, the result, the actual shot, as the output, what are we putting in to have the best maximum result? It all starts with the preparation, of course. I'm going to focus on the two main components, how you're going to help your body load the appropriate way. Number one, the shoulder and the hip turn. Now, I see a lot of players do this, but it does not link up with their hips. So you want to make sure that you're not only taking your left hand, your non-dominant hand back, ideally a little bit past midline. If you're seeing Carlos Alcaraz, for instance, he's somewhere back here, but I'm not as flexible. So the left arm is very actively helping you take that racket back. And if I allow this, you see how my hip and my shoulder both move back. And now we're getting into the legs. So I could theoretically stop at this. I have my hips turned, I have my shoulder turned, but I'm getting a much deeper coil if, in addition, I'm lowering my entire body. And if you're doing this, go ahead, do it with me right there. You're now feeling that you have your entire weight on your, what's called the outside leg or the back leg, depending on the stance. We'll go over that in a second. But what I'm feeling right now is I feel like a spring. I'm all coiled, and now it's ready to unload, to unleash. Okay, which one is the outside leg? Which one is the back leg? Are they different? No, they're not. So for a right-hander, if I'm hitting an open stance or a semi-open stance, which now is the preferred way to hit ground strokes because that is a very great way to load up properly. My outside leg for me as a right-hander is my right leg. I do say back leg when you're hitting a closed stance. And what you're seeing here is whether I'm hitting an open stance, closed stance, semi-open stance, whatever stance, I'm loading and I'm sinking lower because here I'm stable and I'm then able to really transfer that energy up into my shot. Okay, here's my first drill. Take a med ball. Mine happens to be 2 pounds, but if you have a little bit of a heavier one, that's great. Kids can use a basketball or even a soccer ball. Perfectly fine. If I wanted to throw the ball right to you, basically right into the camera, I could do it like this. Of course. But yeah, that feels awkward, number one, and I'm not going to be able to really accelerate and toss that ball very hard. So the further I take it back here with my upper body, which translates into my take back here, I'm helping myself big time if I'm sitting a little lower and you see my leg clearly bent. So here, I can now accelerate up and forward. So that is what you can do either against a fence, do it with a partner, but this is a great drill to learn how to load. Kind of happy that I didn't hit the camera. I'm always a big fan of feeling a new motion. And for that, I'm using a pull rope, and I'm just going to click it onto the fence, and I'm pretending that I'm trying to hit a ball. And yeah, I could do it like this, totally open, and I'm just using my arm. I'm getting a shot out there, that's okay. Better would be if I'm turning and I help myself here again with my non-dominant shoulder. Now I'm loaded, and yeah, I can accelerate, but I feel a lot stronger down here. And now I can move fast and explosively. Now I'm really feeling what I have to do to generate the most strength, the most power into my shot here. And again, it starts from the ground up. You see how I have my knee bent? It actually lifts, it straightens out, and my hip, my shoulder come forward together in a more rounder motion. Couple of quick pointers. Of course, when I'm loading and I'm hitting a closed stance or neutral stance, depending on what you want to call that, the transfer of energy goes a little bit more forward. But what you're noticing is that your hip rotates. And if you see somebody hitting a very aggressive closed stance, a lot of times you'll see them letting the right hip come through. And that is pretty much completely different to what I was taught, because it was always stay sideways. I was the good old Chrissy Everett forehand, and it totally robbed me and everybody else who was taught that way of any really additional source of power. And of course, when you see really, really aggressive players that use their body effectively, efficiently, you see them lifting up. You see them lifting up, and a lot of times they rotate through so that actually their right leg is now in front of their left. So recap, use your entire body. And by the way, the psh, psh, yeah, that's not a thing. That, I don't know, maybe Tsitsipas can do it. Maybe Coco Gauff can do it. But I'm claiming that I have a decent forehand, and when I'm pshing, I'm pshing it on the frame and over the fence. So do load your entire body. Use your entire body. It's not coming out of your wrist. And if you want to see a master in action, here's Carlos Alcaraz's forehand.